Hey, Mr. Wolfblood. No, there's no audio. I've got earbuds in. Yeah, if you're hearing anything at all, it might just be the machines in the background. Yeah, you should be able to hear me okay. The mic is active. I just wasn't talking. Can I turn on timestamps? No, not without messing things up. Anyway, how are you, sir? Uh, Diamond, welcome. No, there wasn't any audio. I wasn't talking while I was working. I've got earbuds in, and the mic filters are squelching all the noise of the equipment behind me. Otherwise, you're hearing the air purifier running, the micro weld running, and might as well pull these out now. Had an audiobook going. Right, so I am trying something incredibly stupid, and I don't have all the tools I need to do it. What I'm trying to do is to make a collet. The little basket that gemstones sit in. So when you've got a gemstone, you've got a little basket, and then you put the stone in, and then you kind of squeeze the basket around the stone. But basically, it's like four little fingers, or five, well, four, three, four, or six, depending on the shape of the stone. And then yeah, when you get the stone in, you just kind of squeeze the fingers around it to clamp the stone into place. Now, the reason I'm saying it's a stupid idea is that it's incredibly fiddly, and every time you solder one piece, something else falls off, which means it's awfully frustrating. What I really need is some clay, hard clay, not like modeling clay or anything like that, something harder. I can set the pieces into, balance my piece on top, and then solder everything in one go. Don't have that. Well, the easy solution is just to buy collets, but I'm trying to do as much of this as I can on my own without having to buy in parts, because once you start buying in parts, it just turns into a Lego exercise. But I think I may not have a choice because this is extraordinarily counterproductive. But yeah, there wouldn't have been any audio coming through because I just wasn't talking while I was working. I had my stream on for nearly 2 hours and didn't realize it was still in bandwidth test mode. So it wasn't actually broadcasting. It was simulating a broadcast, but it wasn't actually live. So slightly infuriating, but nonetheless, it was what it was. Right, do I continue to try this and waste silver? It is a skill I need to learn, and I do need to do it one day. Do I need to do it now for this exact project? Probably not. Plaster, technically yes, but not when it's wet. You'd have to wait till the plasters. What I need is something hard, slightly harder than modeling clay, but still malleable enough that I can push pieces into it get it into position, and then work immediately. If I'm working in plaster, I'm going to have to mix up the plaster quite thick, set the pieces, and then I'll have to wait for the plaster to harden before I can then work on it. There is jeweler's clay available for exactly this reason. I just don't have any of it. My dad never worked with that stuff because he didn't need to. He was good at what he did. He didn't have to use those kinds of cheap tools. He would do it the way I'm doing, one piece at a time, and be very accurate with the soldering. I'm doing it one piece at a time. I'm just not accurate with the soldering. Haven't learned that yet. And making collets is potentially a good way to learn those skills. I just don't think now is the time to do that when I've got a project on the go that has a time factor involved. So maybe now isn't the time to be mucking around with this stuff. Oh, I don't know. What I was going to do is, rather than soldering, I'm going to fuse the metal, which means heating that silver up to melting point and then just squish. So it's not quite welding. For this one, just 4. I'm making an engagement ring for an old family friend. He originally wanted my dad to do it. Obviously, my dad passed. He asked me to do it, but I mean, fuck, that was 2 years ago. Because I've been dealing with my dad's stuff, I've been dealing with my grandparents, and then my grandmother died, granddad died. So the last 2 years I've been so incredibly busy, I hadn't even started the damn thing. There's a little sketch of it in the very bottom left of your screen. That's what he's wanting. So I need to mount 3 stones. We're going for 1 center sapphire. I've got some old scrap stones here that I was going to use to just as a kind of like a placeholder, just to set those in place and see how they look on like a mock-up. So I've got a sapphire there. Well, I've got 2 sapphires there, but ignore that one. Got a sapphire there and 2. Well, these are 2 CZs, but they would be diamonds once it's done. So I need to make a mount for the large mount is for the sapphire, the small mount is for the CZ. Technically, this is the large one I'm working on, and that's the one I'm already having trouble with. So realistically, I think I'm going to buy in 3 collets. Rather than screwing around like this. I think I need to buy componentry and assemble it once the casting comes back. I'm making the master from silver. That way I can, because I don't have a finalized design, I'm kind of making this up as I go. I'm making the master in silver, and then we'll get it cast up into 9-carat white gold, which is what he wants. That way I'm not messing around and changing the design and getting it wrong and starting again, etc., etc., with valuable metal. The tube and splitting it into the 4 thing has been done. And I don't even know if you're going to be able to see this. I don't think the camera's going to focus. Sorry, there isn't enough light. Hang on. Go on, focus. There we go. So that's what happens when you take a tube and you split it in the corners. You can do that. But at this size, it's messy. It's not particularly accurate, but yeah, it is possible. This is kind of where I was at my starting point. But ultimately, I think I'm going to end up buying in 3 collets. I just don't have money to spend in a minute, waiting for all this probate stuff to get resolved. And what little money I've got in the bank, I need to keep for my mortgage, because I don't want to be getting... yeah, I've already got arrears on the mortgage and what have you when I was dealing with backwards and forwards dealing with my dad's estate. Two years of taking care of sick relatives has meant that I've had to turn down an awful lot of work. One of those is just broken. I've had to turn down an awful lot of work, which means I've not exactly got money to spend. Well, one of those broke, which shows you just how fragile this is going to be. The walls of this tube is actually very, very thin, which means that it might not cast at all. It may not flow in the casting. You always get a little bit of shrinkage when you're casting, so this would have to be made slightly chunkier than you want, so that when it's molded, cast, and then they inject the metal in, the metal needs to flow into the little nooks and crannies. If it's too fine, which this would have been, this tiny little flake of silver here, if it's too fine, then chat's blocking the screen there. If it's too fine, then it just won't flow, and you'll end up with an incomplete casting. So, because a collet has to be quite delicate, because these stones are 3.5 and 2.5 mil stones, I think it's going to be better overall if I just buy in the collets. So I'll get it cast in 9-carat white. I'll buy in the collets. No, because if I buy collets and then cast those collets, again, they're getting thinner and thinner and thinner every time you cast. So if I buy in a set of collets now, attach them to the ring, and then send that away to be cast, there's no guarantee that the metal's going to flow in properly to those tiny little nooks and crannies. At least not with one of the casting places I use. There is another place that I use that are a little bit better. They may have better luck doing it. Or the easiest method is to make the ring, get the main ring cast up in white gold, and then just buy some white gold collets and add those on. And that means basically final assembly in white gold. I just don't think I've got any white gold solder. Oh yeah, this is why this is not why I've been putting this project off, but this is why I'm keep getting bogged down in this. I work in silver because I can make mistakes, and I always end up making a lot of mistakes, so I can just scrap it and start again. Once you start working in gold, which is about 30 times the price, I can't afford to be doing that kind of thing. I can't afford to flat out right now, but I can't afford to be doing it when I'm working with gold. So yeah, this was just an attempt at making some collets, hoping that once I'm working, I can start thinking about how I want to do this and what have you. It's not really working. Not really working is a bit of an understatement. I'm not even entirely sure where this design is going to go. What he wants is the band to split into 3 like little branches and then be offset. So you'll have a stone here, the big stone in the middle, and then a little stone being secured on its own here. So this stone's being held only by these two fingers here. The other diamond is being held by these two fingers here. So you've got like a three prongs that normally would meet in the center, but they're actually offset. So it looks, I don't know. I think the guy gave the guy's not he can't draw. Let's just say that. But what he did draw for me looked a little bit like some kind of elvish tree branch kind of design. And that's as much as he could give me. He didn't really know what else he wanted. He wanted to put some pearls in there, which I said straight away is not a good idea. Pearls are porous, which means if you put that on a piece of jewelry that gets wet, i.e. washing hands or something, the pearl starts to absorb that liquid and it changes the color of the pearl. So after a couple of years or so, doing like the dishes, for example, that pearl will go dull and grey after it's soaking up the water. So I managed to talk him out of that at least. If it's a piece of jewelry you take on and off and you only put it on to wear and then take it off before you wash your hands or go in the shower or something, then yeah, pearls are fine. But pearls are porous and they will soak up and they will absorb colour and they will change colour and it just won't. Plus, if you're constantly washing and not drying, eventually the pearl's going to crack. So I managed to talk him out of that. His budget doesn't stretch towards high-end stuff, which is like big structural, architectural designed pieces of jewelry, which is what I make. My kind of Bauhaus style is all about the metal. It's more like sculpture than actual jewelry. So fine, delicate, feminine jewelry, I'm no good at. I tend to make bigger, chunkier stuff. So again, challenges. There's challenges in this piece. Just doing this piece is beset with problems. So let me think. Okay, let's scrap the collet idea because I don't want to be wasting more metal. That I'll melt down because that's now scrap. I did jump on stream a few times over the last week when I started this, sketching out designs and such, but it was I don't know, I wasn't really publicizing it. Even today I'm just streaming for the sake of it. I'm not streaming because I want to stream. I'm streaming because I can and probably should. Right. That's my ring band. That needs to be cleaned up. Actually, that needs a bit more soldering. Actually, hasn't gone through at the back. Solder flowed on top, it didn't flow underneath. Do need to get a little brass brush up here because some of these tools are getting a little bit oxidized. Oh, that's an 18. This is a 20. Since just kicked in because it's detecting all the gases that are being released by this. Shows how good my Dyson actually is, and I am still working with a fractured elbow. So every so often my arm seizes up. Right, leave that to cool. Yeah, I was getting massive encoding issues with this laptop. The laptop's too old to really cope with Twitch, especially without a discrete graphics card in it. So I had to do some major changes to the settings on the laptop just to get it to work. The first day I tried streaming was end of last week, and I just couldn't even get a stable stream. It kept dropping out constantly. But it seems to be stable. I'm getting greens, so it seems to be stable. I don't know how much lag the encoder is causing, because that will be a factor. I've got it set to the fastest possible encoding speed, but what that does mean is there's going to be a bit of lag. In any case, Diamond, how are you, sir? You haven't really had your opportunity to use your VIP status much, have you? We are trying to get D&D back up and running. Again, we're just waiting for everyone to confirm their work schedules and time-wise, we know what kind of time we want to run it. We just don't know which day. Got a little bit of cracking in the metal here. It's a blacksmithing stream. Right. So what I want to do is I need to thin this out a little. This and then thin it out in the mill, and then I can start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this piece here. It's one of the offcuts from when I made the band, and I cut that into three. Basically, put two cuts down the center of that, and cut it into the 3 times, and then I can kind of cut them and shape them and decide the length as I need to. I've got another piece here, which was my first attempt at the band. Very ugly. But I can salvage the metal on here for the same purpose. Yeah, I don't know what the delay is on my stream now with the new encoding settings, but I've only just seen your message pop up there. Scheduling is never easy, so sounds like the delay can be up to 5 minutes. Um, so let's just see how bad the delay is, and I may adjust the encoding settings again. I really don't know where I want to go with this design. Hmm. I mean, in any case, video is choppy, audio is a bit fine. No, it's definitely this laptop. This laptop can barely cope with what's going on here. At the moment, my speed is in the green. I'm getting about 2,000-ish kilobits a second, which is what I'm kind of aiming for. But yeah, this laptop just it can't cope. It's not the internet connection. I've done all those checks. It's just a like a 6-year-old laptop with no internal graphics card. I need to get OBS installed on my other laptop, but I mean even that one, it's a new laptop. It's about a year old, but it has no internal GPU either, just standard Intel stuff. So that's not really going to be ideal for streaming either. Um, so the current plan, I've got the band made, so that's just a ring. Let's use this one as the example. So this is the scrap, but I've got the band made. What he wants is 3 stones set across it, but he wants them to the kind of supports for the stones to be offset. Now, originally I thought I was going to just make the band a U shape rather than joined, have it as a U shape, and then just bend it to fit. But what that would mean is that when it's on the finger, the band would be twisted. So whichever way they're bending to hold the collets, because the collets aren't going to be particularly big. You're talking maybe what, centimeter. It doesn't need to be much of a bend, but if the collets are going longitudinally down the finger, the ring is mounted latitudinally, horizontally across the finger. If I start bending, if the bend is done right here at the very edge of the ring, it's not going to look awkward. Everything, it's still going to be perpendicular. Um, the problem is that when you're actually got the ring on and because your hand isn't complete, basically this hand, your finger there joins your hand at an angle. So what happens is the ring is going to slip down into that angle, and you'll end up with the stones crooked. So I was thinking at one point about having the band as like a coil of a spring. So the band remains horizontal, but one bit pops up higher than the other bit. But then the band isn't square, and you can't size that. So at the moment, my only plan is to have a solid band, which I've got, have the 3 collets going across the top, which I'm going to order in because I'm not going to fucking make them. Have 3 collets going across the top for the stones, and then add in the extra arm or the extra branch, so to speak. So everything's going to be mounted up high. The collets are going to sit up high off the ring, and then I'm going to add a little bit of metal, which will kind of come up to support the collet, rather than cutting this. So that means that the ring's going to be solid. You're not going to end up with any risk of this bending or out of shape. And then everything's going to be lifted up and then supported. It does mean it's going to be a high ring. So rather than an engagement ring that sits flatter on the finger, this is going to be quite raised up. Let's use this as the example. So that's going to be sitting. Oh, I've got to zoom in. You can't see what I'm doing. Let's say those are my 3 stones, just for example. That's the collet with the 3 stones on. If I set it flat, it's going to be quite low on the finger. But to do that, I would have to bend the band, and that's going to make the band weak. So what I'm planning to do instead is to raise it up a little higher and then add in some support metal. Not to hold this bit up. This is going to be attached directly to the band, but just to give it a little bit more of that kind of shape. If I put in the support metal from underneath and then raise everything up too high, you've basically got a knuckle duster. How you doing, Dale? We're just discussing your ring and the challenges it's giving me. Diamond, this is Dale, who's just popped into the chat. He's the unlucky man who's decided he wants to sign away his financial future to a woman. So yeah, if I get 3 collets on top, and then I can add in some fillets of metal, or I raise it up a bit higher, add in a fillet of metal that is actually cut into those 3 pieces, but that will raise the ring up higher, and it will make it a much taller ring on the finger. Some people don't mind that, especially if it's a big stone. But either way, I want to keep the band solid because that'll make the ring stronger. But I've still got to get these kind of like the kind of branch design on. Dale, I've been kind of banging my head against the bench peg, trying to work out how I'm going to do this. I've been kind of messing around trying to make my own collets, which this was a failed attempt at, making a collet from scratch. Not going to happen. I haven't got the skill or the patience to do that. Not yet, anyway. So I'm working in silver. I can't afford to be working in gold right now. So plus I don't have any scrap gold to work with. So working with silver. I'm going to make the master up in silver, and then send that off to be cast into 9-carat white. And that way I can get everything done the way I want it to be done here before I send it off. It is going to mean it's going to cost a bit more on my side, but I don't trust myself working in gold, because gold is literally 30 times the price of silver at the minute. casting prices for silver is £1 a gram, gold is 30. So I don't want to be working in gold knowing that I'm going to be making mistakes and having to potentially start again, which is what I've done. This is a failed attempt at the band. So collet sitting on there at a slightly elevated height, and then the 3 arms coming up to support it is what I'm planning. So on one side you'll have 2 coming up to support the center stone, and then a third one which will be the only support for the forward stone. And then on the offside you've got 2 coming up to support the center stone, and then a third one which will be the only support for the rear stone. Dale, I pulled some scrap out of my dad's kit. What I've got there is a sapphire and 2 CZs. This I'm going to work with. Go on, focus. There we go. So this is just scrap. My dad kept all the stones that he took out of rings and stuff just so that he could mock stuff up. So I've got a sapphire there, reasonably dark, 3.5mm, and 2 CZs at 2.5mm. So that's what I'm going to kind of mock up as the ring. And then size-wise, that's what you're going to be looking at. I'll get that tilted to the camera. That's the kind of size you're going to be looking at. Any bigger than that, and honestly, mate, I know you're working on a budget, but the budget is going to be mostly blown just getting the metal. So I'm going to try and do as much as I can in silver. That way, when it's cast, it's just minimal. There's going to be no wastage of metal, really. And then I'm going to have to come down to London and going to pop into either Ward and speak to them about gemstones and see what I can get. And I'll get the best I can for the money. But about half of the budget is going on the metal and the casting. Actually, probably more like 2/3 of the budget's going on the metal and the casting, and the other third is going on the stones. Kind of is what it is at the minute. But yeah, white gold, well, gold of any sort. Don't trust myself working straight into gold, which is what my dad would have done, but that's my dad. Was my dad. I'm getting into the habit of bringing the dice into this room while I'm working, because as soon as I fire up the micro-weld and it starts kicking out gas, the Dyson fires up automatically. So it proves that it's actually working. It's doing its job. But when I was melting down metal last week, I had the crucible out and the molds, and I can't get enough heat into it using the micro-weld. The tips aren't big enough. So I had to get the propane out. And once I started running propane in here, I could barely breathe. It was even the winter I had to open the windows and everything just to get airflow through here. So having the Dyson here when I'm working is actually a pretty good idea. Right, so raw ring band, that needs to be shaped still. It still needs to be, frankly, it's not even round at the minute. So alright, now it's round. Now it's flat. Okay, so raw ring band. I've got fat fingers, so P is my literally a P is my little finger. So 3 stones about that long, mounted up, and then I'm going to cut the branches in a moment out of that piece, and then I'll tack that on, and then that will come up and support the collet with 3 stones. What I'll probably do is run a bit of wire underneath the collet. So the collet, I'll put the collets upside down, run a strip of wire, pretty much like this kind of wire, underneath them, just to give them some support, and then tack on the arms from here. Shimin, good afternoon, sir. So, how is everybody? I know I haven't really done much in the way of streaming for a long time. Obviously, some of you know there have been reasons for that. Why is everything blurry? Oh, because you haven't put your damn glasses on, you idiot. Right, so this is going to be the shoulder. I've got actual rings actually on my finger. This is going to be the shoulder. So if you imagine 2 shoulders coming up each side, so you've got that shoulder there, and there'll be another bit on the other side, and then those will then split into the 3 little branches, and that will support the side of the ring, so to speak. Got a steel ruler that's so dirty I can't read the markings on it. So, what better way than to clean it up than using emery paper? I saw that, Shimin. I didn't realise you. Are you 501st? The only reason I ask is that my brother was 501st, down in Portsmouth, TB1615. We had stormtroopers, Gary Hales, and some of the crew came out to his engagement, well, to the wedding reception, but also to the funeral when he died. There's only a couple of months in between, unfortunately, but yeah, we had a load of stormtroopers out at the wedding just to keep the kids entertained. There is quite a delay on the chat, by the way, because of the encoding settings I've got set up. So I think the delay is coming up to about a minute and a half. So do bear with me on the chat, guys. Sorry about that. This laptop can barely cope as it is. Right, what have I got width-wise? .5. Well, that's just fucking awkward, isn't it? So I need 1 and a bit millimeters because I've got the curve of the blade to account for. At least that room is clean. One good thing. Alright. To cut offset to that line. Minor saw blade, I think. See, this is one of the issues I have with sorting all this my dad's stuff out is because it was my dad and because it was his workshop, nobody else worked there. It wasn't a shared workspace. It was his workbench, which means everything was set up the way he wanted it or liked it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it was set up logically. That's not a saw blade. I don't know what the hell that was. Nothing was particularly set up logically. There was no like order to it. It's not like things were color coded and all the stuff that I would do and I am in the process of doing, which is color coding the tools. No, not so. So I asked whether they used my previous costume because of my general pips were the wrong size and in slightly the wrong place. That's the problem with 501st. You have to be so unbelievably spot on. With the stormtrooper, because Al started out as a stormtrooper and then switched to biker, and he built the he actually built the armor with the 501st guys. They had like workshop sessions, like kind of like a club meeting. He went along and he was doing it with them, so they were able to guide him on that stuff from the very beginning. But yeah, you're not the. I've heard that mentioned by a lot of people that it's very hard to get your costume approved because it does have to be absolutely screen perfect. So yeah, if the pips are too small or if they're in the wrong place, then it doesn't get approved. But at the same time, I know why their standards are high, and I understand that those standards are high for a reason. But not everybody can build to that level first time. It's just a bit unfortunate there's such a barrier to entry. I was considering joining, but having my costume made, I didn't have the time or the patience to be going down the build process. Different now, but that was a while ago. So I do still see the guys every so often. Now that I'm up here in Newcastle, not so much. Because the 501st crew up here, I don't really know them personally. But at least when I was down south and I was running into them at local events and what have you, Al was based in Portsmouth. Gary's not far away, and there's pretty much any event in the southeast they would kind of head to, whether it's Middlesex and Essex or right down onto the south coast. So yeah, are you going to be kind of reworking the costume to make it more accurate, or are you just kind of happy with where it is? Trying to make this cut without taking the top of my finger off with it. Look, I've made a teeny tiny fork. Looks like one of my IKEA ones as well. You're not going to focus, are you? Stupid camera. I switched over to this mini SLR because I wanted better quality lenses and the ability to do focus like this, but it just isn't interested. There you go, little teeny tiny fork. So we're getting to something like that. Get to where I'm at as long as it's recognisable as don't go on the public. It's me. Obviously, it costs you. What's it cost you? Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, man. It's just how much time and money do you want to invest in it? And for a lot of people, that just isn't necessarily a factor. That's the barrier of entry. Uh, but if you've got something that you can wear to a Comic Con, and as you say, people recognise the character straight away. I mean, I recognised it as soon as you posted the pictures on either was it Joni or Sam's Discord? I can't remember which. Um, yeah, so it just depends on where you want to go with it. If you've got the time and the money and the disposable income, sorry, time and the money is the same thing. If you've got the time and the money to take it further, that's one thing. You don't necessarily have to do it now. You're like 98% of the way. And if you want to then take it further later, that's always an option. Or if you just want to leave it as something that you can just cosplay as rather than trooping, and just kind of be on the fringes of it and kind of do a Comic Con here and there, then I mean, yeah, that's totally up to you. The one thing I'll say about 501st is the commitment required is significant. If there are events going on, they want you to get involved. That's the whole point of being part of the organization is getting involved. So going along to charity events and local fetes and being there when like a new building is opened because you're just there to entertain the kids mostly, but being there just to entertain the kids and raise a bit of money for whatever charity it is, it's all part of it. If you don't have that kind of disposable time to invest in that or that disposable income, then you're right. You need to decide how far do you want to take it. Um, and if it's just to get something that's accurate enough, 90% of the way there, and you're just going to have some fun with it and see where it goes, good for you, man. Good for you. Um, God, I wish I could. As I said, I probably can now. But I just don't think I've got the mindset for that kind of stuff anymore. My primary hobby is shooting, so all my time and money, or disposable in money, I should say, is spent on either guns or ammunition or range fees. Um, lately, I've been doing a lot of clay shooting. Lots of rifles over the last 2 years when I got my new to me uh, SLR. But the problem with that is that there are not many places that you can shoot the full power 308 stroke 762. And if you do have somewhere you can shoot it, it's probably going to be expensive. Clay shooting, on the other hand, I love clay shooting with quite a passion because it's fast and it's fast paced, and there's more action going on than just shooting at paper targets. So all the muscles in my fingers start to cramp up. Sorry, tendons. So I'm not. Uh, so backpack was a bargain. Old metal frame hiking packs. Yeah, yeah, they're all over the place now. My old camping shop used to sell them, but that was like 20, 30 years ago. I remember I had one as a kid. When I went away to school camp, everybody else brought suitcases. I brought like a full-on backpack, expecting to go on hikes, and no, no, we were like 10. We were going on walks, and that was only like a mile before everybody started moaning and complaining. Um, 10 good, yeah, 10 quid on Facebook Marketplace is a good deal. Um, if it's the old wireframe, like tubular metal frame ones, you're talking like 1950s design. They were selling those up until like the 70s and early 80s. But by then, like proper, full on nylon packs with suspension harnesses and molded back sections to help spread load out and stuff. The way you carried stuff on your back changed. The science behind it changed. But yeah, I know the type you mean. Symmetry quality is about 800 quid. Yeah, lucky. Mine something. Wow, 100 quid for a stormtrooper. Is that finished or unfinished? Full kit, fully finished, which was why I felt like I ripped the. Only the helmet wasn't up to scale, but Dengo doesn't use one, so. Ah, right. I see where you're going with this now. Okay, so you started with a found stormtrooper kit, and you just substituted out the helmet. Okay. Makes sense, Mo. Makes sense. No, good work, man. Good work. Um, I kind of had the idea that, given all the different things that I do and all the different skill sets that I've got, that armor building wouldn't be too difficult a thing to get into. I talked myself out of that real fast, believe me. Um, Not the case at all. Armor building is horrifically complex because it's not a case of it's good enough because it's not quite the vision I had, but it's good enough for where I want it to be. Doesn't work. You're either screen accurate or you're not screen accurate, and it's very easy to become hypercritical of your work. Well, I mean, it's easy to do that anyway. I'm like that all the time. But especially when you can see that you're only 80% of the way there, and you start thinking, oh well, yeah, this isn't quite right, and this it's the Adam Savage effect, is what I call it. You never finish it. You're constantly reworking it because you find some new photos of whatever, and it's not a concept in your head that you're trying to work towards. It's a concept that somebody else came up with, and sometimes you just there's only so far you can go, or so close you can get. At least with what I'm doing here, if this isn't quite what I had envisaged, that doesn't matter. Because nobody really knows what I had in mind when I started the piece. I know Dale's probably still in the chat, but given the vagaries of the sketch that I was given, there's not really much I can work with there. So we are at the stage. So let me bring that up. My camera will focus. There we go. So obviously they're not attached yet, but those are going to be the supports for the stones. Come on, there we go. So I've got three little arms there. I'm going to cut these down a little bit deeper to make them longer, and then I can then bend and shape these. And then I'll have to do another one for the other side. Yeah, cool, Dale. I wasn't sure if you're working or not. I didn't know if you were just kind of popping in and dipping back out. But yeah, I mean, if you're working, you're working, dude. Don't worry about it. If I throw out a question, just as and when you can, mate. But yeah, happy to have you in. At least you can see that the project is progressing. Maybe not quite the time scale that you'd hoped, but honestly, man, it's been a rough 2 years. When I was speaking to firearms licensing on the phone last week, because my ticket's due for renewal, but I was also looking at getting some extra slots on my ticket for some new guns that I've got my eye on. I was chatting to the guy in Northumbria here. I know him. He's the one that came like years ago. He came round and actually did the inspection of my property. And he's remembered me since, even though I've only now moved back up. He still remembered coming round. Mostly because the mantelpiece was actually packed full of trophies. Not like your granddad's place was, Dale, but certainly you got people in the shooting community that really aren't competitive shooters. They just shoot because they enjoy shooting. But he came round and he saw a mantelpiece packed full of trophies. And when he came round last, it was about 3 years ago, club had just awarded me the Donegal medal for winning that silver at the Imperial meet. And he saw that on the mantelpiece, and he was impressed. Frankly, most people in the community don't even know what that medal is. I didn't know what it was until they gave it to me. I'd never heard of it. So yeah, he saw that and he was very impressed. But yeah, I was telling him about some of the stuff. He was asking about whether I've got enough storage and whether I'm keeping my dad's guns or not. And I said, yeah, I'm not getting rid of my dad's guns. I'm just going to add to the collection. And told him what had been happening. His first reaction is like, mate, you've had such a rough one. It's like, yeah, but shooting is kind of what gets me back to, kind of helps me reset. Because I can go out there, shoot some clays, get the adrenaline going, and have a bit of fun there. Rifle shooting is all about the discipline and the focus and the concentration, but clay shooting it's kind of like being on a little outdoor assault course as far as I'm concerned. The adrenaline gets going. And even Kieran mentioned it. I was chatting to him about it because he rang me for a catch up on his way home from work. Just find out what I've been up to, and I said, yeah, I was out clay shooting the other day, and it kind of really got the blood going again. He said, yeah. The one thing he's always noticed is that when I've been out clay shooting, as soon as I've got a shotgun in my hand and there's clays flying, his words, not mine, is that I kind of come alive. And watching my neighbour, because it's my neighbour that I took along with us, watching his video footage of me shooting clays, I can understand what Kieran means. Never really thought about it like that, but I can understand what he meant. Shooting paper targets is all well and good, but I started out action shooting, and I like action shooting, and I can't really do that so much with pistols anymore. This is looking rough. I'm not happy with this. I'm really not happy with this. I mean, it's going to work. It looks awkward. I just don't think I'm doing it right. The concept is there. I just don't think the execution is. Or maybe I just need to spend more time refining this. Just don't have that much metal to play with. At the moment, it looks like a bent fork, like a dinner fork that's got mangled in the dishwasher. That's what it looks like. That's another thing I need to do this week, is get some more family photos printed up to go on the wall. I've got the odd one of my dad here and there, but that's it. So I'll get another picture of Al. I've got a picture of Al in the bedroom, obviously. Bedroom is pictures of the kids and a couple of pictures of some friends, but that's all that is. Don't go downstairs in like the public space of the house. Weather effect metalworking. Honestly, I work so little with this stuff at the minute. No, I just work as and when I work. This thing kicks off quite a bit of heat as it is. This is one of those, hang on, let me turn the lamp off. It's one of these massive LED panel lamps that you see advertised for garages. This puts off like 3,000 lumens. Sorry, no, this one's 1,600. The one above me is 3,000. This thing puts off quite a bit of heat. I mean, these are warm to the touch. The panels on these are aluminium and they act as heat sinks. And then because I'm working with fire, more of the problem is exhausting the heat. It's actually quite nice working in here in the winter when you're not sweating your tits off. I remember when I was making Joni and Cole's pieces, a replacement wedding ring for Cole and a necklace for Joni. When I was making those, that was the year London had the 40 plus, no, not last year when we had 40 plus degrees, but the time before, which I think 2018. Sorry, 2018. 2019. And we had like 39, 40 degrees in London. And I was in my dad's workshop doing that. We were melting down metal to make the piece. And it was 35, 36 outside. But by the time you got into the workshop, there's no thermometers around, but it must have been well into the 40s. And we're working with propane, melting down in the crucible, and then hammer forging the Damascus billet, which is the stuff that my ring was made of. This ring. Sorry, it's not going to focus, but this is my prototype Damascus ring, which is the gold and silver layered. So we're working on a new billet, so I can make Joni and Cole's piece. Yeah, that was brutal. It took 3 days because we could only do about 4 hours at a time before we were just exhausted. Because you're bending and twisting and heating and then hammering it by hand. And then with all the heat that was building up, my dad and I were starting to get dizzy after a while. It was so hot in there. But as far as the temperature of the metal for working at the metal, no, doesn't make a difference. Ductile temperature of silver is well into the hundreds of degrees Celsius. So, if anything, it's actually more comfortable being in a. And also bear in mind, this is my front bedroom. So the back bedroom behind me is where I sleep. The main bedroom to the right, so the larger of the two front bedrooms, is my guest bedroom and my computer room. This space used to be my office space. So it used to be filled with bookcases and my computers. But as soon as I started doing VR, I mean, the room isn't that big. This is the doorway here. So we're talking, 3 meters by 2 meters? It really is a box room. It was the little one's nursery. If anything, you just about get a single bed in widthways across the front of the room. So yeah, it's not designed. It wasn't designed as a big space. This house was reconfigured by the previous owner. when they built the extension. So this is my front bedroom. So it's a heated space as it is. It's part of the house. If anything, the radiator is underneath this bench, and the radiator here is actually turned off because this room gets warm enough on its own when I'm working. Actually, I think it's turned off. Oh no, it's turned right down. It is on, but it's turned right down. Random power plug. Not sure what that's for. Might be for the other lamp. I was out till 4 o'clock this morning. I was about to go to bed, which was about 2 o'clock. I was about to go to bed, and then I looked outside and I saw that the clouds were starting to get a bit intermittent. And I'm thinking, okay, I tried to go out and see the comet last week, or at least try and find it in the sky, even though it wasn't really particularly bright. And I think I caught a glimpse of it, but I didn't have because it's directly above me. I couldn't stabilize my binoculars very well. I didn't have any ability to take photos looking straight up while I wasn't exactly 100% sure where it was. So I thought I'd go out again yesterday once the cloud cover breaks, and it was kind of like intermittent clouds. And then when it did finally look like it was going to clear up a little, it changed its mind. And you get like a gap of a few seconds, and then more clouds. And then a gap of a few seconds, and then more clouds. And it wasn't enough. Frankly, by 4 a.m., I was out there for 2 hours. By 4 a.m., I was just like, I'm falling asleep. I was ready to go to bed before. And now 2 hours later, I'm out here in a car park in the middle of nowhere with the occasional people flashing their headlights at me because it's a notorious spot for dogging around here. But it is away from the town centre and there's no street lights nearby. And you do get some nice dark skies. If you're going to be doing any kind of astronomy, whether it's comet spotting or... I did see a couple of meteorites. You see the few little streaks of light going overhead. Which is always nice. But I didn't see what I went out there for. And I was just so damn tired. And I've been tired anyway because I've not been well. So I've been sleeping like 9-10 hours a day. As it is. Yes, woe is me. Okay, that's the front side, reasonably shaped. I think that's looking all right. Stay. So, I need to clean up the band. I need to make another one of these at the other side. I need to do the same on the other end. Get 2 of these done up, and then that's the 2 supports for the collets. They don't have to be particularly large. They need tiny little things because the stones are pretty small. And then these will attach on like that, and I'll blend them into the body of the ring. So I just need to do the same again on the other end of this piece. Don't want to cut it off. No, I don't want to cut it off because that means at least I've got something to hold on to. Mill. To be fair, I mean, I was standing in the middle of this notorious doggers car park with a massive pair of binoculars, and I'm looking straight up. So I think some of the people were quite offended that I was actually more interested in what was going on behind the clouds than what was going on in a Ford Focus. But, you know, each to their own. I mean, not to say that me and the ex didn't get up to a bit of fun once in a while, but I'm not going to discuss that on here, just in case my little one decides to eventually become interested in what I do for a bit of fun and ends up watching this video. Because, you know, the internet is forever. Right. Slimmed out the other end of that piece. So now I need to mark that one and then do some more cutting. So Marie, my friend Marie in Germany, we used to work together. When she started at the company I was doing training for, I did her initial onboarding, and we've kind of been friends ever since. More so in the pandemic when we were kind of checking in and talking, like video calling with her and her son pretty much every day. Because she's a bit of a maker as well, and she had no idea I did any of this kind of making stuff until we started talking about it during lockdowns. Whenever you're making a piece of jewelry, you obviously have you can send it away to be hallmarked, which is when they put the official. Have I got a little card to demonstrate what I'm talking about? No, I don't think so. When they put the official UK, like the lion mark or something, or depending on the proof house, it's a cougar or a line or a gate, a portcullis kind of gate. And then they mark the metal that it's actually made of. They take a sample, they scrape off a little sample, test it, confirm that it is what you say it is, and it gets assayed, effectively proofed. And then they'll stamp it to say, yes, this is officially whatever it is, but you have to pay for that service. Now, if you buy jewelry retail, it comes proof marked. So you'll see, depending on the shape of the stamp, you'll see different kind of animal heads or different kind of logos will tell you which country it's come from. And then you'll see the different code numbers for what metal it is. What you'll also see with handmade jewelry is you'll see a maker's mark somewhere on it, which will usually be just like the person's initials. And as a maker, you can have that stuff made up for you. Now, my dad had his own one, and up until now, I've continued to use my dad's stamp, which is just 3 tiny characters of HRK, which are his initials. But Marie had ordered this for me from Etsy, which is a maker's punch. You're not going to see it; it's way too small. But on the very tip of that is my initials, OSK. So she had that made up for me. This is the test stamp that they did with it. So, where am I going? I'm going that way. Don't think it's going to pick up on the camera. But yeah, that's what gets stamped into the silver. And I've got my own maker's mark. I don't think it was particularly expensive. I just haven't got around to doing it. But I haven't actually used it yet. So, Dale, your missus' engagement ring is going to be the first to be stamped with my maker's mark. I'm sure I took the dividers out. Where did I put the dividers? Last night, I was downloading, and I've been watching the old Sharps Rifles series with Sean Bean. When he first started, this was like early 90s, I think. 1993 was the first season, which is basically Napoleonic War, based on the Bernard Cornwall books. So Napoleonic War, 1809, and he's a leader. He's like a soldier that's been raised up through the ranks by what would become Lord Wellington, and he goes on his little special missions. Bit of a ragamuffin, doesn't like to follow orders type, but he saved the General Wellington. Well, not General Wellington. General, is it Alistair? Who became Lord Wellington. His name isn't Wellington. But he saved his life purely by chance, and he got a field promotion. So it's what kind of started Sean Bean's career. But I was watching that purely because this is me going back to guns, by the way. So if you're not interested in guns, you can kind of mentally switch off. I've got a British Army SLR, and it's an official British Army one that's been decommissioned down to single shot, like pretty much bolt action now rather than semi-auto. And there are very few of those still in existence because the MOD, when they switched to the SA-80, they basically dumped all of the old rifles in the English Channel, just threw them overboard to rust, rather than recycle them or cut them up or sell them onto the civilian market, which is common for the US. They destroyed them. That was close. Could have had my finger there. So a few of them did make it out. A few of them ended up in private hands. Mostly they ended up in museums. And the museums will have effectively fully working versions for their collection, and then they'll have some dummies that go on display in the cabinets. So I think the Royal Armouries at Leeds have got a good collection of SLRs in various different configurations and iterations of the weapon, but very few of these made it into collector's hands. So I was bit the guy's hand off when I had the opportunity to buy one, because I think there's maybe only a couple hundred left. It's a rare gun, very rare gun. And the fact that mine is in shooting condition, it hasn't deactivated to hang on the wall of a pub as a trophy or something. This is a working gun. It's fully fireable, and I shoot it regularly. Needs a new barrel because the barrel's completely shot out. But that's only because it saw actual use in conflict. And that's something that you just have to accept when you're buying military rifles, especially like old military rifles, is they do have a history to them. They've probably seen conflict. They've almost definitely seen conflict. And they could well have a kill count on them. And that's part of owning military rifles, is you've got a rifle that has some provenance. Now, that was made by Enfield based on the Belgian FN pattern. So originally they were the FN FAL, which was the metric pattern gun, still being made in the US and Brazil in the metric pattern. But the British bought the rights to the gun, and under license has the Royal Armouries at Enfield, just outside North London, produced them specifically for the British Army, with a few tweaks. And one of those tweaks was they made an inch pattern. So all the measurements were converted from metric to imperial. So that's why it's a particularly rare gun. It was only the British ones that were made in this configuration with this inch pattern measurement system. I'm getting to the point, don't worry. So Parts are, yes, technically interchangeable with a metric pattern gun, but there are a couple of unique things on the British gun that defines it as a British-made version of the FAL. So, yeah, an Enfield-made Belgian design FN FAL, which we call the L1A1 or the SLR. When I was a cadet, back when I was a teenager, I had the opportunity to shoot one. I was shooting a little Lee Enfield rechambered in 2.2 at the time, and Sergeant came, yanked me off the range and said, right, because I was easily the best shot on the unit. But that's only because my dad had me shooting 2.2 pistols and rifles and air guns since I was about 11 years old. So I got yanked off the firing point and said, right, have a go at this. And he just handed me an SLR. So I think there was a visitor had come in to inspect, and he brought his service rifle with him to kind of show it to the kids. And it's like, this is properly chambered in 7.62. So going from a 2.2 to a 7.62 is a big step. And I just quite happily continued firing because I've shot full power 7.62 before. It didn't bother me in the slightest. And he was impressed. And then for 30 years, I've spent missing that rifle, longing for that rifle again, knowing that there's almost zero chance of me ever finding one, or at least a proper British one. And then this one came up for sale. So I leapt on it. So I've got an Enfield-made SLR. I'm already got a deposit down on an Enfield-made Lee Enfield, the World War II issue Lee, rifles that the British were using. And that's a number 4 Mark II, which was specifically a World War II one. And got a deposit down on that. So as soon as all the probate money gets sorted out, that's getting paid. It's a Pakistani-made rifle, so it's not actually made by Enfield, but it's made on Enfield tooling. So in the 50s, when they stopped producing the number 4 Lee Enfield, Enfield sold all the tooling to Pakistan. So originally they were being made all over the world. Ishapur in India were one of the most famous. They were making some really high-quality guns. To the Lee Enfield design, but on their own equipment. But yeah, in the case of this one, Pakistani ordnance factories, they bought the old machinery from Enfield, and they continued to make the number 4 Mark IIs. So the one I'm looking at is Pakistani ordnance. It was made in 1956, so it's not a World War II gun technically, but it has seen conflict. Because all those Pakistani ordnance rifles were used in the Kashmir War in the 50s, which is the border regions between India, northern India and southern Pakistan, and also where your Kashmir Naan comes from. So this rifle does have provenance to it, but at the same time, it's probably the newest version of an Enfield I could possibly buy. And having the rifle bore scoped, frankly, the barrel of this 1956 bolt action is in better condition than my 1964 SLR. So I put a deposit down on that gun. Really looking forward to getting an opportunity to own that. But that's already been put aside for me. So I've got a bolt action World War II Enfield from 1950s. I've got a semi-automatic, now single action Enfield SLR from the 1960s. I'm already looking at another 303 British. Looking at the SMLE, which was the number 1, which is the SMLE, the short magazine Lee Enfield, which was the full wood stock all the way out to the tip of the barrel Enfield, the kind of bulldog nose to it. That's the one that the Brits were using in World War One. So I'm already looking around for a good one of those. because I've now got it into my head that I've owned potentially, well, soon will be owning two of the staple British rifles for the 20th century. Now I'm starting to look back into the 19th century. So I'm already looking around for an SMLE or a Smelly, number one, probably a Mark II. After they put the stripper clip guides in, but before they started screwing around with the bolt systems and the safeties and all that. And then if I do continue down this road of British Army issue rifles that were used for significant periods of time or in conflict, that now takes me into the 1800s, which puts me in Martini Henry territory. And the Martini Henry was a trapdoor rifle. So it's one of the first self-contained cartridge rifles that were used in general service. It's a 450 caliber. So what they did was they took, which is essentially a 14 gauge shotgun shell, and necked it down a little, but it was packed full of black powder with a big lead ball on it. So it wasn't that dissimilar from a black powder shot, in that it's a lead ball with black powder in it and a little bit of wadding. What they did was they just wrapped it in brass. And the early cartridges looked like they were brass foil, and had been hand wrapped around a mandrel and then hammered into shape. They were very, very rough. But that was the very first cartridge-based rifle that the British were using. Made famous by the movie Zulu with Michael Caine. Mr. I want to be in every bloody movie ever made. Caine. But they were essentially, you had a long lever on the bottom, you crack the lever, the old cartridge would pop out. It was a dropping block or a falling block action. So when you crank the lever, the back part of the bit that locks the cartridge into the chamber, that would drop down and eject out the old cartridge, and then you put the next one in, clapped it shut, fired. So still single shot. But that was used through most of the British expeditionary wars. So India, as the empire was starting to kind of peter off. This is under like early years of Queen Victoria. But the archetypal Victorian era rifle is the Martini Henry, which apparently are still in use in some parts of Afghanistan by things like tribesmen and such, because they were inherently very accurate guns if they were well taken care of. But they were black powder. It wasn't modern nitro powder loaded into those. Which means I'm going to have to load my own ammunition, because you can't buy ammunition for a Martini Henry. You're going to have to make it. Which gets me into black powder, which is something I never wanted to get into. Dale, your granddad was all about black powder, and he tried so hard to get me into black powder firearms. But it was just a lot of faff and a lot of messing around, and I watched the guys at our club shooting their black powder guns. And granted, most of them are having constant problems because they don't clean their damn guns. Black powder is notorious for fouling. All the soot and crap that builds up inside the gun can actually cause the gun to either stop or catastrophically fail if you don't keep the gun clean. And yet they don't keep their guns clean. It's also incredibly corrosive, which is why you're supposed to clean your guns every time you use them. But no, can't tell that to black powder shooters. And what you end up is a gun that's either rusted to hell on the inside, or it probably was when they bought it. So they don't really care about it. And it's all gummy and kind of gummed up on the inside, that when you do fire it, it kind of just a bit of an anticlimax. Got to make sure I'm doing this, because these are in opposite directions. So one's going that way for the front piece of the ring, the other one's going that way for the back piece of the ring. So I've got to make sure I'm filing the right side. So yeah, if I go down the route of a Martini Henry, I'm going to have black powder reloading equipment set up in my garage. God knows it's not going to be done in here. This room needs to be almost sterile. That's going to be set up in the garage for reloading black powder. And then if I'm reloading black powder at all, well, if I'm reloading, it's going to be to get cheaper 303 and 762 and 44 Magnum, because I've got plenty of brass for that. That can be reloaded. But if I'm reloading, I might as well consider black powder reloading, because I'm considering a Martini Henry. And if I'm reloading already, and I'm reloading black powder, this is my mental not ratification. This is me mentally justifying all this nonsense. If I'm reloading all that stuff already, and I'm already got black powder purchased and stored, why not keep going down that rabbit hole and go all the way back to early 1800s, King George, and the Baker rifle, which was the first rifled long gun that the British Army used, and that's the one that was shown most prominently in the Sharps TV series. Sharps rifles, they weren't using muskets, which were smoothbore, which are effectively shotguns. They weren't using muskets. The British Army had smoothbore Bakers, but also rifled Bakers. And the whole point of rifling is that twisting cut that you put inside the barrel. The bullet engages with the rifle and it starts to spin the bullet, and that keeps it nice and stable when it flies, making it more accurate. Which is why round about Napoleonic era is when you started seeing sharpshooters. Not because the guns were inherently accurate, but because you had, with a little bit of skill, even with a black powder weapon, you could shoot accurately out to 600 yards. So you could hit a target at 600 yards with a black powder firearm. And that was because technology developed the rifling. I think it was Metford. There were some early Lee Metfords that had a different pattern of rifling before Enfield took over. So that's my rationale. Rationalizing, that's the word I was looking for. That's my rationale. Is I've got a Lee SLR, sorry, an Enfield-made SLR. I should soon have an Enfield-made number 4 Mark II, which will then mean that I have to buy a Enfield number 1, again possibly a Mark IV. I think I'm looking for. Not with trapdoor magazine cutoff, but with the stripper clip feeders, the lugs for the stripper clips. And that brings me to 19th century weapons, which would be a Martini Henry, which means I have to get into reloading. And if I'm into reloading, I might as well get into black powder, which opens up the door for the Baker rifle. And so, full circle, I come back to the point that I was watching Sharps last night. I was about to go to bed and decided to go out and look for a fucking comet instead. All I found was curries. Old joke. Comet and Currys being two very famous electrical retailers in the UK in the 80s and 90s and early noughties. But given that it's Whitley Bay, where I was, there's plenty of curry places around there anyway. So I've downloaded the entire run of the full Sharps collections. So all 7 that they did. The BBC took each book and split it into like 2 feature-length episodes. So once you get rid of all the credits and what have you, it's like about an hour and a half mini movie per book. But I remember watching those when I was a teenager. Actually inspired one of the first pieces of poetry I ever got published. But once you get over how dated the show is and the kind of the visual effects they're using in the opening credits and things like that, once you get past all that, and you remember it's 90s television that you're watching, and what you don't have is camera angles zooming in everywhere and things cutting quickly and weird semi-grunge rap music going on in the background, thank God. Bernard Cromwell would have murdered somebody over that. Yeah, it was actually quite cool rewatching Sharps and seeing the concept of not only shooting 2 shots a minute, which was the standard for the British Army back then, but Sharp and his chosen men firing 3 rounds a minute because they were taking a few shortcuts and not following the proper official way of loading and firing your weapon in a regimented manner. Instead, they were taking a few shortcuts for the sake of speed. And in one case, they shot 4 rounds a minute because they were more... Honestly, the concept... I mean, historically, it's not 100% because there was no Sharp lieutenant raised up from the ranks. It's all fictional. But the theory that in the early 1800s, you could have had guerrilla fighters as part of a regular formal army. And when I'm talking about Napoleonic here, I'm talking about a whole, maybe not a full company, but at least a brigade, would go marching into battle with their pipes and their drums playing. If you're American, you're thinking Civil War era. It's that period of time. And they've got the big bright uniforms on, which makes you easy to spot from the other side of the battlefield, so you don't end up killing your comrade. But you're basically announcing your entry with pomp and ceremony, and you've got the general riding his horse with all the plumes and everything, and you're making a great big show of it. And what the Sharp series kind of brought in, again, why it's not historically accurate, is the idea of a scouting team. A small group of marksman grades Sharps that would scout ahead, would be super sneaky because they weren't wearing the bright uniforms. They were wearing dull green, no gold buttons or bright white leather gear on. They were basically wearing green and black. So they were effectively talking about your first form of military camouflage, hiding in the bushes and scouting ahead and then picking off certain key targets. Because if you pick off the commanders or the officers, most of the men will just scatter at that point because it's up to the sergeants to keep everybody in line. Most of the men will have scattered, give up and just run. So, yeah, it's kind of introducing modern military tactics in a Napoleonic era, which is what makes the books good and what makes them entertaining. And I forgot how much I enjoyed that show. So all the memories started coming back when I was watching that. Anyway, I'm just rambling while I'm working, so... Okay, that's both. It's no point me holding up. You're not going to be able to see it. Camera won't focus. It's both pieces done. So not perfectly shaped, but I'm kind of getting there. I'm going to cut these and then splice them onto the ring. They still look like a dinner fork that's come out of the dishwasher a bit mangled, so I need to kind of profile these better, make them look a bit more organic. They're still very, very boxy and very angular, so I need to make them a bit more organic. But then boxy and angular is kind of my signature because I am a fan of Bauhaus design. And that is my particular preference. And to be quite honest, Dale, if you wanted something that wasn't Bauhaus and boxy and angular, you should have given me a better drawing. Right. I need to shape these. I need a switch block. What I'm now going to do is put a bit of a bend in these. I'm going to be quite. Actually, do I want to do the bend now? I should probably finish shaping them before I start putting any bends in. Because once I bend it, it's going to make shaping, like rounding over the top edges to make them look more branch-like, is going to be much harder. So maybe swaging isn't the best idea just yet. So under this, looking at just the tip under a loop, it kind of looks like a chicken's foot. I've made a chicken's feet. I've made a pair of chicken's feet in silver. Tremendous. And I'm wondering if I can get the microscope working. Let me see if I can get the microscope up. It's notoriously finicky. I always have trouble when I'm trying to use it on stream. Switch over to microscope cam. We want to turn off our main camera. Okay, the microscope is actually working. I don't know if it'll still be working by the time I move it, because the cable on it is a little bit dodgy. Lens cap off. Bit dusty, sorry. All right. There we go. We have a chicken's foot. So that's what I've got. What I kind of need to do is profile these so they're a bit rounder, so they look like twigs. And then when they attach to the band of the ring, I'll blend them into the ring. So it's not going to be as wide as this at the base. So you can see that I've started. That's what I've been doing, rounding the profile so it doesn't look like a mangled dinner fork. And then when it gets attached to the ring, that's going to be smoothed down with the ring, so it's not going to be anywhere near as wide as this. And then the other side, which is same kind of pattern but bent the other way, I've left this one a little bit. I cut this one a bit longer. I might go back and make this first one a bit longer as well, because I can always trim these off if it's too long. So again, I've got chicken's foot. That needs a little bit more filing there because it's a little thick at this point. These two are okay. Bit of a lump there. Bit of a lump there. So I want to take a little bit more out on this side here to kind of even that up. How's the microscope cam looking? Is this helpful? And then I've got to take that down a bit further so it's even with this one. But get in there. So just lengthen that one and pull it over to this side a bit more. Thin down this edge. Yeah. Okay. It's going to be like, I think there's like a 2-minute delay on stream, so I'm switching away now, and you're probably now going to start chatting about it. So back to Workbench. Thank you, Microscope Cam, for your appearance today. I'm going to wait for my main cam to come back on. There we go. There's my main cam again. So for those of you, any of you that might be thinking about streaming, one of the problems with OBS, because I'm using OBS installed on the laptop here, rather than Streamlabs. I'm using OBS. And one of the problems with OBS is that when you've got multiple webcams set up, they must have their own separate USB controllers. For example, my laptop's only got 2 USB ports on it. And I've got 3 cameras in here, 3 webcams in here, plus the microscope cam. Now, if they're all plugged into the same USB hub, OBS doesn't like it. You'll see what happened just now is when I switched away from microscope cam back to my main cam, it didn't immediately kick in. I had to go and reset the camera settings because they're connected to the same hub. Now, technically it works, but I can't have feed coming from both of them at the same time because OBS sees the USB hub as a single device, and then if you're trying to get data from 2 different feeds on the same device, it gets all confused. It's an OBS issue. It's not a Twitch thing. It's just an OBS thing. I think they may have fixed it in the new version, but I haven't upgraded yet because once I got this running, I didn't want to mess with it. So I've got to deactivate one camera and then switch over to the other. And then when I come back to my main camera, which is this one, I then have to deactivate and switch back. So I've got to black out and then reset my camera as I'm switching over. Now what that does mean is that I can't have the view from microscope cam and my bench cam, which is the one you're watching me on now, the bench cam. I can't have the feed coming in from both of those at the same time. So you won't see me streaming with both of those cameras turned on at the same time. Not unless I switch one of them to a different hub or a different USB port. So just a bit of OBS nonsense for those of you that might be streaming or streamers in the future. It is just nonsense. It doesn't really make any difference. But if you've got a laptop or a machine that's only got limited USB ports, you're better off getting, if it's a PC, get a capture card and make sure it's on a separate USB hub port. On a motherboard, all of your ports are separated. But if you're going to be running from a USB hub, you can't have 2 feeds coming from on the same hub. If it's USB-C, that's not so much of a problem. But standard USB-A, yes. I know, nobody cares, but it's just one of the little weird things. And because this laptop is so damn slow anyway, it struggles to even run OBS, let alone all the USB demands that I'm putting upon. So what I need to do now is I need to order the collets for the arbitrarily sized stones that I've decided I'm going to put on this ring. I need to order the collets for those, so that's going to take a couple of days to come in. I don't want to cut this until I have the collets. Because the length of this is going to be dictated by how big the collet is and how high it's going to sit on the top of the ring. So these will need to be attached. I mean, I'm physically going to cut it now so that I can show you what it's going to look like when it's kind of semi-assembled. But I'm not actually going to solder anything together and start shaping the ring until I've got those collets in. And I'm going to have to put that order in now frankly, with money that I don't really have. So it's the only way to keep this moving forwards. Otherwise, the project's just going to stall out and it's going to be ages before I get anything done. So rather than sitting downstairs watching more shops today, I figured come up here, do some streaming. And then 2 hours in, I realised that I'm still in streaming test mode, which is showing all the cameras working, showing me my data transfer and how much data and bandwidth I'm using, or would be using, but I wasn't actually live. So that was a waste of the first 2 hours of... Well, that was from midday to 2, and it's now... What are we coming up to? 5:30. That's more my stupidity than anything else. I was fiddling around with all the settings on here, trying to get everything working, so I must have clicked something and didn't realise it. Oh no, I changed the settings because I wanted to see the upload speed with the encoder on fast. So I had to do a simulated broadcast, and I forgot to take it off simulated broadcast mode. So yeah, my own stupid fault. Righty-ho. So. Right, Dale lad, if you are still here. Do I get any? No, I can't get any closer than that. That is what I'm kind of working on. So, obviously these aren't attached yet. They will be. If you are still in the stream, Dale, it's going to be like a minute before you hear me because of the delay. And I know you're at work, mate, so you may not actually catch this in time. So I'm going to get a photo and send it to you. Ah, good stuff, bud. So I'm going to send you, I'm going to take a quick photo now and send it to you. So you can see kind of where I am with the design. And you're going to see it live in a second. I'll hold it up to the camera. Why the fuck would I have my flash on? I never have flash on. So the people, when you see people at concerts and they've got their flash turned on, for fuck's sake, you're like 300 yards away from the stage. How do you expect your tiny little LED flash to make it all the way there and then bounce back again to illuminate your photo of whoever? When it's a concert, they're massively overlit anyway. Right, let's get focus in. Come on, refocus. There we go. And it's just clamped together at the moment with the forceps. But that's kind of what I've got so far. You've got your three kind of tines, your three fingers. I'm going to bend them and shape them a little better. But that's what we've got. So these will be attached onto the side of the band. I'll then profile them in. But you've got a nice solid band there. I need to shape it and slim it down. It's way too chunky at the minute. But you'll have a nice solid band there. And then that will then rise up to these three little kind of branches, which will then kind of support the collets once the collets are attached. So I'm not going to do any attaching yet because I need to wait until those collets come in. I do need to do, this band is pretty much square profile at the minute, which frankly looks and would feel horrible to wear. So I need to round off the outsides, I need to round off the insides, make it a bit more smoother on the inside. Give this like a, imagine if you take the cross section of a ring, meaning something as simple as a wedding ring, imagine a capital D. So you've got a flat bit against your finger and then a rounded semicircle on the outside. So that way you haven't got a sharp edge catching on things. And even then, that flat bit on your finger, you'll actually profile that off a little. So it won't be anywhere near as sharp on the inside, because that makes it easier for the ring to be taken on and off. So what you get is I need to draw this. Where's my notepad? It's easier if I draw it rather than trying to explain it. So your typical wedding ring. Pick up a pen that isn't working. There we go. So a typical wedding ring would have a D pattern. So that's the bit worn towards the body, and you have that profile on the outside. At the moment, what I've got is a square pattern. So I need to take all that stuff off there to make it rounded. I have no idea if you can even see what I'm drawing. Switch to folder. Okay, so start again. Are we sitting comfortably? So at the moment, I've got a square piece of metal. Still can't see that. There, you must be able to see that now. Right, so that's what I've got. If you cut that ring split that ring onto its cross section, that's what you've got. Now, a typical ring will have a D-shaped pattern, so you remove that. So this is the finger side, so that when you're wearing it, you don't have these edges catching on things. Now, to go a little step further, is you actually smooth off the inside slightly. So you've got a slight radius on the inside, which sits against your skin. So rather than the whole ring being in contact with your skin, it's more like just this bit, which means you've got less pressure on the finger. So overall, it makes the ring more comfortable. But also, you're shaving off a little bit of metal there, so it's smoother to take the ring on and off. Now, wedding rings and engagements ring, you don't really take them on and off. But it also kind of reduces the amount of metal that's there. It makes the ring more comfortable to wear long term. So that's where we're going. That's what I was scribbling. I probably shouldn't use this bit of paper, but it doesn't matter. That's what I was scribbling down to work out how I was going to do the branch thingies. So I need to get on to Euro mounts. I need to order a few bits and pieces. I might go to Cookson's actually, because I've already got an account set up with Cookson. Order the mounts that I'm going to need. Wrong way, there we go. Order So 3 mounts, two 2.5mm mounts, and one 3.5mm mount. I'll order those in silver. We can then attach them to the ring. Once I've got those 3 mounts, I'll probably order a couple of spares because knowing me, I'll cock it up. But get those mounted in a nice straight line. Get them attached together to begin with. Then I can drop them onto the top of the ring. They'll be soldered onto the top of the ring, so they're going to be attached to the ring. And then I can work out how much these kind of branches need to come up and bend in order to accommodate the collets that I bought. So it's going to be a bit of a pause for a couple of days while those get delivered, which is fine because I can start smoothing and shaping the band in the meantime. Whew. So I've been online for how long? How long have I been? 2 hours and 43 minutes. I've actually been at the bench for nearly 6 hours. About 5.5 hours. Yeah, about 5.5 hours. So I'm gonna drop all this. Actually, I'm gonna clean up the band and then drop it all in the acid and get the pickle to clean all the crap off the outside. And then we will call that a day for today. I also need to slim down the band because the band's quite thick and chunky all the way around. It's like 2.5mm all the way around. So we want to slim that down on the sides. Plus I'm adding more metal from these bits that I'm soldering on. So there's a fair amount of taper that I need to put on that. But I do need to clean off the top first. Because this is where the joint is from the solder. You didn't catch this at the beginning of stream because I said I kind of screwed that up and I wasn't actually live. When you make a ring, the quickest and easiest way to make a ring is to make a spring shape. Wrap the metal or wire, or whatever you're working with, wrap it around a mandrel, like something like this. This is the big metal rod that you can hammer on. Wrap it around that, and then cut off one link. And what you'll have is a spiral link like this. It won't be matching up because it wants to overlap. But you've got like almost a complete link, but it's just offset. So once you cut it off, you can then bend it into shape and attach it, and then you're left with a ring. But that bit there is what I'm cleaning up now, because that's where all the solder was. And of all the spots on the ring, that's probably the ugliest at the moment. So I want to keep that bit as chunky as possible because that's where the join is. Keep that nice and strong. And I want to taper down the sides. So I do like using this little red marker when I'm working. It's something that my dad used to do. So we've got top to bottom is there, and then we've got north, south, and we've got east and west there. So I'm trimming down the sides there. And then once I thin the metal down, then I can put the rounded profile on it. Well, once this is done, the inside of the ring is going to be round, but the outside of the ring is going to be more egg-shaped with the point of the egg at the top. Again, like a racing steering wheel, I'm marking top dead center so I can see where the point of the egg needs to be, so I don't come too far up when I'm grinding off all this. Shimon, when you were talking earlier about working in a hot environment, um, if you're like blacksmithing, for example, you can have all the ventilation that you want or you can get. It's going to make things more comfortable for you. But if you look at what I'm doing here, I'm just brushing the silver dust off the bench peg. I can't have fans running in this room. I do have a fan right behind me, and that's running at a very low. It's actually not on at the minute. It's just kind of oscillating to sample the air. It's an air purifier more than anything. But you can't have fans running because that's going to blow all this silver dust around. And this is literally money that I'm grinding off, and it's falling into the skin. So if you've got that blowing around, then that's almost literally money out the window. So with a commercial jeweler's workshop like my dad used to work in, what you've got is you've got massive air extraction systems and filters. And those filters would pick up all of the gold and silver dust. And then those filters get sent away to the refinery. Also, when you wash your hands, I've got little bits of tiny little specks of silver like stuck in my fingerprints. It doesn't matter how much I brush my hands off with a paintbrush, I'm not going to get all of it. So when you wash your hands and you've got, say, 20 or 30 smiths working in a workshop, I'm talking like Sude, where Dale's dad and my dad used to work. You've got 20 or 30 smiths, and then you've got the polishing teams and all of it. All those people washing their hands, they're going to be, you're going to need filters in the sinks as well to catch, very, very fine filters to catch all that metal and silver dust that I'm banging, and I can see tiny little specks of silver, that's finer than glitter. It's almost like flour fine coming off the bench peg. And again, that's money. And just with what I've done here in 5 hours, this is maybe 20 or 30 pence worth of silver. It's not even a half a gram. But when you've got 20 or 30 people working and they're all kind of washing their hands a couple of times a day, there's all the stuff that's getting sucked up into the air and extracted out with the fume extraction. You could be losing between £5 and £10 a day just in silver dust. You add that up over a year, it starts to make sense. 3.5 to £4,000 worth of dust, silver dust, just going down the drain or out the window. Yeah, it's a consideration. Not when you're working. Hang on, something's just pinged on my laptop. But yeah, working in mega heat, like we had in London before. Um, you, yeah, my dad would never have fans running in the place. I would have a fan running here, but not blowing directly at me. I have it blowing, and the minute it's set up to blow towards the door, because I was using it to control the fumes from the micro weld. So it's sucking the gas in and it's processing it. It's an air purifier. But when I was working at my dad's, I would have to set a fan up. So a fan in the other room to pull the air out of the workshop and blow it out through a vent. Not to be blowing directly at you and then blowing all the dust around. Yes, you still lose a tiny amount that way because there's still silver dust floating. It's suspended in the air. You're going to lose some, but nowhere near as much. And that's what you wouldn't have if you're, say, a blacksmith. In a blacksmith, you'd be working in a forge. You'd have all the windows open, get some air moving through it, because the temperatures that you're working at, the metal's going to cool down quickly anyway. And then you just put the metal back in reheat, and then you pull it out and you're hammering away or whatever you're doing with it. I've watched enough blacksmiths working on YouTube over the years to know how similar the roles are. The primary difference is the size of the piece we're working on, the temperatures required, because obviously silver has a much lower ductile and melting point than steel and iron would be. But you're still working with hot metal, you're still working with heat. I'm not radiating as much heat because I haven't got a forge permanently going in the background. I just heat the metal up in a crucible or on heat the metal up on a heat mat as and when I need to. Stream's still up. Did it freeze for a bit? I think when I clicked over to my web browser, it kind of chewed up all the resources, and the CPU really isn't up to doing this. Hang on, so when I switch over to another window, all the CPU processing kind of drops off on OBS, and now it's starting to come back up. So if you give us a minute, it's starting to climb again. Yeah, we should be kind of getting back to a reasonable frame rate now. If it died or it looked like it died, it's just because I switched to another open window. That's all I did. I switched to a different window. And the laptop completely shit a brick by the looks of it. So we should be back to normal now. So yeah, sorry about that. But I literally alt tab to another window. It's done it again. Right, drop down again. It's slowly starting to come back up again. But as soon as I do anything other than OBS, yeah, there it goes. It's just come back up to full strength. So yeah, there's like this is a dual core laptop, but yeah, both processors. It's struggling with the encoding. It needs to have just OBS and nothing else open. I can't even have a web browser open at the same time as this. Um, Before the stream kind of dies off. I didn't want to bring my main laptop, my new laptop. I didn't want to bring it in here because if it's in here, it's getting covered with crap. I've got no problems installing OBS on it. It'll take a while to configure everything because I've got to copy all the configs over from here. That's not the issue. It's just it'll get covered in crap. At the minute, yeah, audio should be back. There is no video at the minute because I'm not moving. I was just looking at camera. So yeah, it'll be back up in a second. I just stopped working while I was doing that, but I literally just alt tab to another window, and all that everything just died off. So this laptop cannot handle anything but OBS streaming when I'm streaming. There's just not enough processing power. Which is fine because I've got my phone next to me. I've always got my phone handy if I need to check other windows. So let's get the calipers out. So we were at 2.6 thickness all the way around for the band. 0. Start again. Sorry, 2 mil. We were 2 by 2.6, 2.7. So it was 2.7 wide, 2.7 wide, and 2 mil thick. So going from, see, just over 2, because there's a bit of solder still stuck to it, down to the sides, which is now 1.9, to the base of the band, which is 1.8, back round to the side, 1.9, and then back up to the top, which is 2 mil. So what I've done is with that filing, albeit it didn't look like I was doing that much, and that's kind of the point. Workspace is getting messy. With all that filing that I've been doing, I've taken off 0.1 of a mil off the sides and 0.2 of a millimeter off the bottom. Doesn't sound like much. To be fair, it isn't much. But that's the process. Is everything back up and running normally? I'm showing all in the green. What I'm doing now is I'm starting to round off those corners to give it that D shape. You know what I really fancy? I really fancy doner kebab. Not a nasty, nasty, greasy one. Just a decent doner kebab. We've got a reasonably good place nearby. But I fancy a doner kebab for some reason. A giant elephant leg sized block of mystery meat slowly spinning around on a grill. With a crunchy pita, loads of salad, and chili sauce poured over everything. Oh, I'm getting hungry. Yeah, I think the delay is coming up to about 2 or 3 minutes because of the laptop struggling to do the encoding. But at least your guys are getting to see what's going on, and you're seeing it in some nice, reasonably high res footage. So I'm not checking stream constantly and replying. As soon as I see your message, I'll read it. But it's not like we're trying to play something like Among Us over a stream, and you need to be hearing it with minimal latency. So if there's a bit of a delay, it's not a major problem. It just means it'll take me a second to get through your message. Well, maybe 30 seconds. So we've got a nice little rounded profile on there. That's looking nice and comfortable. Doesn't take much. I don't want to go. You see, I put some extra red marks on the ring here and here. So there's the center point where it was soldered. Then I've got these two red marks. So don't want to go further than that with this rounding off. So all the rounding off I'm doing, I want it to be at the bottom and the sides of the ring. So those are just my registration marks to remind me not to go any further than that. This is a really rough file that I'm working with. It's actually the coarsest file that I've got. So, wood-wise, you would equate this to something like a bastard file. Really coarse cut for taking off like huge chunks and shaping metal. Well, I'm now going to switch over to all these files in order. I do need to start sorting all this stuff out because my dad had a lot of files. I need to get them into some kind of order. So I get into Finder there. It's a triangle. These are all flat. So these are all I think this one's not actually flat shaped, it's just broken. Do it this side, yeah. So these are all the half round files. This is the one I've been working with. This is the coarsest one. And I now need to go down to a finer grade. That's the smoothest. So let's go down to that one next. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start color coding all these handles. That's how my brain works. I'm very color focused. So I want to start putting a little blob of paint on the bottom of the handle so I can see what I did the other day. I didn't show it. Well, I thought I was streaming it, but what I've done is I've organized all the files and the hammers into one of these like letter racks. There's another one over here behind me. So just behind me over there is another one of those letter racks. My dad used to use them quite a lot. I don't know where he salvaged them from. But I've organised my hammers, my files, the buffing sticks, all that kind of stuff. It's on one of these multi-racks. So it's taken up much less space on the bench, giving me much more workspace, that's for certain. Get that light out. But what it also means is because I can't see them straight away, I can't immediately glance over and see them all laid out on a table. I want to color code them. So I have all the, say, like all the coarse files in blue, smoother medium files in yellow and the fines in red, or whatever the color code is I decide to. There is I think there's an industry standard for coarseness. I've noticed it on things like emery boards and diamond files, blue, yellow, and red. But I can't remember the order. I think blue is the finest, then yellow, and then red is coarse. That's the plan. Whether I'd like to wrap a bit of insulation tape, a bit of coloured tape around it, or put a little spot of paint or something, or just use a marker and just like put a little draw a shape on here, like this is a half moon. Draw that kind of half moon shape on the back of the file handle, so I can see straight away, oh, that's the half moon and that's red, so that's the coarse half moon file. It's how my brain works. But then, yeah, I'm very color focused. Let's bring you back up. Zoom in a bit. There we go. And we're back. All right. So now I'm not really removing metal. I've done the big metal removing with the bastard file. This is a slightly smoother file. This is to remove the marks that file left behind. So I don't want to be removing big chunks of metal with this. This is just for, I'm now cleaning up the shape to see where we are. Transfer those marks over because I think they were getting rubbed off. So that's the center. An extra thick mark there. And that's the shoulder. 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 Jimmy, you mentioned about heating a workshop. Do you have a workshop of your own? It's the kind of thing you only really think about when you're working in a workshop, and it becomes blatantly obvious that it's too damn hot in here. You'll also see that as I've been working, I've been gradually cutting a shelf, a little diagonal shelf into this chunk of plywood. This is just plywood. Normally a bench peg would be hardwood, but I didn't have one to hand at the time. I do now, but I've left this one on here because it works. All you need is a solid chunk of disposable wood, and then as you're working, you've got something to rest the tool on as you're working. So I've kind of filed myself a shelf in the wood, flat on this side, but curved on that side, because that's the motion of the file that I've been using. So this gives me somewhere to rest the file, and then I just rotate the piece around, as you've been watching me do. I never really understood how my dad got these kind of weird shapes carved and cut into his bench thing, because I always assumed he'd holding it and doing this. It's like, no, no way, no. You're resting the piece down. You're holding the piece in position, and then most of the time it is obviously it's the tool doing the work, but most of the time it's the tool doing all the movement. I want to make sure it's perpendicular because I don't want it to be sloped, and it is sloped on one edge. So I need to take a little bit more off this top edge. Good. Starting to take shape. Right, now for the slightly smoother one. So again, not removing the metal, we're just cleaning up the marks left behind. You can see why I didn't want to work straight into gold, how much I've removed from this ring already. So from rough, coarse-filed metal to what now looks like a heavily worn surface. So this is now smoother, but it's still quite rough in comparison. It feels like this is somebody's old ring that they've worn for 20 years and never had it repolished. That's the kind of state that it's in now. So from what looked like it had saw marks in it from the bastard file to now 20 or 30 years of daily wear kind of roughness to the surface of the metal. Still, there's a lot of like tooling marks here that I need to take off, but we're nowhere near done yet. As soon as I solder the shoulders on, I'm going to have to redo a lot of this filing anyway. What day is it today? Is it Thursday today? Now we switch to emery board. This is basically wet and dry paper. P400 is the coarsest I've got, and it goes up to P800. And again, the same process. I'm trying to, as I'm going back, so I'm trying to roll the file or the board over the top of the piece to round over that top surface on every stroke. I'm not going to end up with any flat spots. Or at least that's what I'm trying to do. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm any good at it, I'm just trying. I'm a trying kind of person, apparently. Semantics joke there. So really what I'm doing here is I'm shaping the band primarily for comfort, but also so I can thin out the band and reduce the amount of metal. Now, if you want a nice, thick, heavy ring, because you've got the cash to spend, that's fine. But I am working to a budget, and I've got to take into effect the weight of the metal of the finished casting. And whereas a man could quite happily wear a thick, chunky, heavy ring all day long and not notice it, it's not the case that you find with a woman. Women don't like thick, chunky, heavy jewellery, especially since that's most of what I design. Shimin, I don't know if you're in, I don't know if you're still in the room, but I don't know if you're in Joni's and Cole's streams as well as Sam's. If you are and were back in the day, you might remember the piece that I made for Joni. I know Cole still wears his ring every day. It was his replacement wedding ring, because the one that he had, frankly, it was one of the ones with the wooden inserts, and it just fell apart after a while. They're not particularly robust rings, but he wanted wood grain, and I gave him wood grain in metal using the Damascus technique. Is it Friday today? That's how far behind the lag is. God, we must be up to nearly 5 minutes of lag then. Sorry, guys. Because you're only now hearing about me talking about doner kebabs. Okay. It's pretty good shape-wise. Obviously, I'm going to have to do more filing and shaping when I attach the shoulder pads, the twig branch shoulders to the ring. It's going to have to be a whole ton of reshaping done for that. But as a basic band, I'm quite happy with where it is right now. Get all this brushed down. So I'm going to weigh this now. So I'm going to get this weighed, then we're going to raid out, and I'll continue the bulk of this. I'll do some more of this tomorrow. Let's see, I'm going to check to see who is available. I'm doing this now because with the delay that I've got, by the time you hear me talking about this, we'll be pretty much ready to raid. Christy, it's Friday night. So I'm just checking to see who's online so that I can get the raid set up because there's going to be a delay. So Cole is actually streaming. What's he doing? Words on stream at the minute. And oh, he's playing that 80s game he was playing earlier, yesterday. He was having trouble with the boss fight. So we're probably going to raid out to Cole, but with the delay being like 3 to 5 minutes at the moment, by the time you hear me talking about this, the raid will be happening. So yeah, it's like hello from the future. So let's get this weighed. Need to tar it first. So we are at 3.2 grams, which at current casting rates will be about 90 quid's worth of gold. So with the shoulders, which haven't been slimmed down, we're at 4.2. So that's £150 worth of gold. That's not including the casting fees. So I need to slim that down some more. There needs to be a fair chunk more taken off that band to thin it down. Because you can see it's still quite a thick band there. Next stream, I'm going to finish off shaping this. Once that's done, I'll also order the collets for the stones. So once those arrive, then I can start soldering up the piece together. So in the meantime, I can do some shaping. It's going to take a little time for those collets to arrive. But we'll... so next stream I'm going to keep working on the band, thin this down some more, get some nice shape to it. It's a lot more comfortable than it was. You don't feel it kind of digging into your finger as you're kind of sliding it on and off. And that's because I've rounded the profile off on the inside, but I need to do a lot more, clearly. Might use the drill actually just to slim that down some more. It'll be a lot quicker than hand filing. So that'll be next stream. And then once the collets arrive, which will probably be closer to the end of next week, it's going to take a while for those to come in, especially if it's Friday today and I'm ordering them tonight. We'll get the collets attached. I've got the couple of scrap stones that I showed you earlier. So these are just scrap. This is a pair of CZ, just in the middle there. 2 CZs, 2.5 mil. And 1 sapphire at 3.5 mil. Just out of my dad's box of scraps. So we're going to set those up in the ring, see how it looks. And then if I'm happy with that, then we'll get this, we'll get the stones unmounted. mounting stones is something I've never done before. This is something I'm learning. But we'll get the stones unmounted and we'll get finished up, get it all nice and polished. Because if I send it off rough like this, then it's going to come out of the cast rough like that. So get it all polished up, get it looking nice and smooth, nice and presentable. We'll get that sent away for moulding. That'll take about a week to do. So we're already talking like the end of February now. But yeah, we'll get that done. And then hopefully by beginning of March, all my probate stuff will be resolved. I'll have some money in the bank. I'll be able to come down to London. Because I'll need to come down to London to pick the stones. I'm not going to buy gemstones blind off the internet, especially not for something like this. So there's no stone suppliers up here that I know of. It's all London. So if I'm coming down to London, then I've got no digs. So I'm going to have to be booking hotels and what have you. And there's people I want to catch up with. So that'll probably be early March. So yeah, hopefully end of March this will be done. And Dale, if you're still in the stream, you're planning to get married beginning of July. So I'm kind of cutting it close, and I'm sorry about that, bud. But you know everything that's been going on, so I'm sure you understand why. But yeah, can't really spare the cash at the minute. I've got to make sure I've got money in the bank for my mortgage. But we'll get this on the way, and I'll get those collets ordered so we can proceed. So we're gonna raid out to Cole because frankly he's one of my favorite people. To make sure I'm spelling it right because he's got some odd spaces at the end of his username. So let's get that set up. Oh, something isn't working there. There we go. Okay, so guys, thank you very much for joining. We'll probably already, by the time you hear me talking about this, we'll already have jumped over to Cole because his stream will have way less lag. But thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope that's been of interest today, and I'll pick this up next week when the collets arrived. So it's probably going to be like Tuesday, Wednesday. I will communicate this on Instagram. I need to get better at doing that as well. But we'll get all that assembled up, roughed up and ready, and we'll be good to go. So thank you very much. Hope you have a great weekend. And I'll probably see you online somewhere else. Can't believe I just gave you a bloody thumbs up.
those two were useless. I was fine.
Big word.
I just wanted to know someone. I just wanted to know someone. Now, you might not believe this, but I decided it wasn't worth living anymore. Not in a world without love. Not in a world without you. So I decided to follow in your footsteps. I would raise myself from existence. You know what? I succeeded.
What is happening? Oh my, that's so rad.
But as I left this mortal coil, I started to feel apprehensive.
If you don't have the soul.
Something started to burn inside of me. I thought, I don't want to die. Then I woke up, like it was all just a bad dream. I was back in the dark, back in my same.
Wow, he's freaking me out, dude.
Interested, I decided to experiment. Again and again, I found myself in the edge of death. As long as I was determined to live, I could go back. He sees me gobble. I was amazed too.
Wow. Yeah, bro.
At first, I used my powers for good. I became friends with them. I solved all of their problems flawlessly. Their companionship was of use for a while as time went on. So, what would this person say if I gave them this? What would they do if I said this about it? That's it. That's all they are.
This guy's crazy.
Tippy! Tippy!